So let us begin. First of all, we will make our affirmation of love that we gather here to practice in love and to take a moment to experience the love that is present, not simply because we are here, but because love was already here before we arrived. And that it is here ready to hold us in our practice. And that this has been the truth of life in every moment, in our every breath, in our every heartbeat, that love is and is available to each of us, and ultimately that each of us are love. We are love. So think about this question. How do you interact with the world? How does the I that is me or the you that is you, how does it interact with what's not you? So how do each of us as human beings interact with other human beings? So just inwardly letting arise to yourself the ways you interact. How do we interact with other animal beings, other plant beings? And how do we interact with other things? Things that we might even say aren't alive. But again, things that are not us. How does it actually happen that we experience other humans, other creatures, other things? So 3 answers arise pretty quickly for me. One way is through the mind and through our senses. So the senses enter through the body, so that's body. And then the mind, the brain processes what we're interacting with in the world. And the third thing is spirit or heart or soul. So we interact with the world and we experience the world, body, mind, and spirit. So that's our being. That's probably not the totality, but that's a big chunk of who we are, body, mind, and spirit. So as you stay with that for a moment and the ways that we flow in and out of experience with creatures and things around us, considering the question, well, where do you begin and end? Where does your beingness begin and end. So we are conditioned to believe generally that we begin and end with our body. There are other spiritual teachings and metaphysical teachings about auras and things like that. But generally, we just automatically tend to think, I am this being that is contained within this skin, this body. I begin and end within that body. In our practice of surrendered presence, which is the first of 6 principles of transformation, it is the practice of surrendered presence that opens the way to all the other principles of grace, trust, vulnerability, connection, and out. And as those principles flow in and through our life, our own personal transformation unfolds. And each unique being's transformation unfolds in its own unique way. But there is one commonality, at least one, and the one I'm speaking of tonight. And that is that all who are in the process experiencing transformation, who are transformed, have a greater and greater sense of freedom. So we talked about this last week, that there's always the polarity, that one way we understand that we are more free is to understand how we are less of the opposite. So we may not have this, we may not say, oh, I feel more and more free. We may say, I feel less and less constrained. I feel less and less small or constricted. I feel less and less shame or fear. I feel less and less enslaved to something, at the mercy of something that I feel like I can't get on top of. So another way to say that we have more and more freedom is to say that we have more and more spaciousness. There's actually more and more space to our being. So these things that constrain and constrict, they actually limit our being. So we have this longing. We have a big longing for space. If I only had more inward space. Oh, if I only had more space in my day and my calendar. And then when I have the open space in my calendar, I say, what am I going to do with that time? Then as this is what it is to be human and to be ego-based and driven, how am I going to fill that time? So we are actually longing for spaciousness, and we have a little fear of it as well. I remember when I first started backpacking in Alaska with Mark, that I felt this real low-grade fear, maybe medium-grade fear of being really out in the wilderness. And so wide valleys, craggy mountains, no one in sight. I'm out here in all this space. I'm out here all alone. So of course, that's why we went out there, was to have all the space and to be alone. But then I could also feel my smallness, my limit, what I believe to be my limitedness. So just feeling that sense of how we're constantly drawn to the greater and greater expansiveness. So back to, but to transform actually will mean that there are less and less of the things that hold us back and more of space, spaciousness. So back to that question, where do we, I, you, begin and end? Again, we're conditioned to believe that we are in our body or that we are in our mind. And when we believe that, we narrow our sense of ourself. We tend to think of focusing our attention. We do that. It's helpful in many ways, but we value it to focus our attention. We're out enjoying nature. We feel very expansive. We feel very spacious. And then a worry pops into our head. And we go from this, for those who are listening on the recording, I'm holding my hands outward, and it may even be a 360-degree spaciousness around us. And the worry pops in, and we go like this. We go down to this very small, focused thing. Everything else falls away. And we just now focus on this small thing inwardly. We're simply present in our day, and then it's the to-do list. We're enjoying a moment with a friend or a loved one, and then our judge, our inner critic, comes in and sows a seed of doubt about what that friend thinks about us. And we go from this expansive enjoyment to this narrowed worry, focus, shame, fear. So when we know that our true nature, that who we truly are, so when I talk about this, it's not like trying to create something that we are not. It's actually inhabiting something that we are. When we become to believe that our true nature is spaciousness, and we practice experiencing that truth about ourselves, our being expands and expands and expands. And we can walk around like that. And people are affected when we walk around like that. We can call it all kinds of things, openness, open-heartedness. But when we are in that space, other beings relax. They respond to that openness, that spaciousness. So our beings can expand beyond this body, this layer of skin, until it fills this room I'm in, or until it fills this house that I'm in. I believe it can expand until it fills the world, maybe even the universe. That's not for me to worry about. That's for love to worry about. My work is to allow myself to just experience the spaciousness that I am, so that fear, negativity, shame, the judge doesn't get a foothold in my life, in my experience, and constantly draws me into that narrow focus. So freedom, spaciousness, expansiveness begets more and more and more of all of those things. Our practice of surrendered presence begins with focus, attention. So we're looking at our body, but then gradually, as we move through the practice, it begins to expand until we end in the last stage of the practice with complete surrender, the point at which we are hoping to have an experience of emptiness, openness, complete surrender. So just notice that as we go through the practice tonight. We don't have to start there. We don't always have to live in that space. We practice knowing that that's true about ourselves. I invite you now to drop into your own experience. Simply notice what it is that you are experiencing. And then to intentionally guide your attention to your physical body. And to see what it's like in this moment. What can you notice about your body? What might your body like you to notice? And staying with the body, but also beginning to include your inner experience of heart, spirit, energy, mind, thoughts. What emotions might be present right now. So now being aware of yourself as body and as inner experience, and then beginning to include what is outside of you, the space that you're in right now. And engaging the senses to have a sense of your space. And then gradually letting that awareness of what's around you expand, feeling your here-ness in the room, but also feeling your here-ness in the world. Just letting your experience extend out as far as it would like to go. And at the same time, still feeling yourself here. Now letting your awareness rest in the space between your foot and the floor. And see if you can play with sort of an expansive awareness. That your attention is there in that space, but you can also feel yourself staying open. This wider here-ness. And then have a sense of the way that your body, especially the foot, is being acted upon by the force of gravity. And the way that it's holding your foot to the floor. And extending it to feel yourself being drawn into the earth and held on the earth. And taking time to feel what it feels like to be held. And as you feel yourself held, recognizing that you can relax, you can begin to let go. Checking in again to see as you begin to let go, if you can feel this spaciousness. You can feel yourself beginning to expand. Already less constriction, less holding back. And now beginning to include your breath in your awareness. Just watching the breath as it arises from the low belly, comes in, the belly expands, the chest expands, and then the breath drops back down and out, landing in the low belly again. experiencing yourself as this being on the earth in this place that's breathing. And especially noticing the release of the breath. And feeling the repetition of letting go. The breath flowing out, the muscles losing their tension. So that each breath carries you deeper into a practice of letting go. And whenever you feel ready, just allowing that out breath to carry you into complete surrender. Into spaciousness, emptiness even. Always held in and by love. There's no focus here. There's no directing our awareness. Just complete surrender. And ever so gently in this space, just asking the question again, maybe a different way. Where do I begin and end? And you sense a different experience. I invite you to stay in this place of surrender as long as it feels good to you. I'll sign off now. I thank you so much for practicing with me, supporting my practice. Love you all.